Hey John, how are you?
Hello, I'm fine.
Yeah, haven't seen you for a while. How's things going?
Oh, fine. Things are opening up. Life is getting
Yeah,
busier.
yeah. Already start meeting with some friends.
Yeah.
Outside feeding. Are you in the city? You live in the city or
No,
outside?
I'm in the suburbs in Northern Virginia, just outside
Uh,
of DC.
oh yeah, you're in Northern Virginia. Okay, I didn't.
Yeah, it's just
I see. Somehow I thought you were from Boston.
oh, I am.
Oh,
Ultimately.
okay.
You can hear my accent?
No, no, I don't know. I think maybe mentioned. Well, I unfortunately I don't know. I didn't develop the ear enough to really. I can distinguish some accents. They're very obvious, but not not that much.
Yeah, I
I'm
know.
yeah. I'm not the Dr. Higgins.
Yeah. No, it's hard for second language speakers to hear accents
Yeah.
in their second language.
Some you could hear that
Yeah.
the distinct ones, but yeah, if it's close,
Well,
Dr. Higgins could like distinguish the accents within like 500, like a half a kilometer radius, right? You just walk in the city half a kilometer and he could see the accent.
Well, I don't have a good
Wow.
ear myself. I find it very hard. You either have the talent or you don't. There's not much you can do about it.
Yeah.
Uh, but your English is really good. When did you start?
I start, well, I'm luckier than many because I came here when I was like 22, 23. But yeah,
Oh, that's late.
but yeah, that's late. Yeah, I graduated in Moscow after I finished university. That was the time. So yeah, it's kind of late, but I worked on it. I worked
Hmm.
on it. I really wanted to speak well. I always thought that if you speak well in one language, you should be able to speak well in
Yeah,
another.
yeah.
Hi, Greg.
Literacy
Hi,
is the
John.
hot. Oh, hi,
Hey, how
How are
are
Zach.
you?
you?
How are
Well,
you guys?
literacy.
John, glad to see you. How are
Oh,
you?
yes, finally. No, things. I got vaccinated and my wife did too. So we've been
Uh-huh.
doing a
Pf-
lot. That's what happened.
Yeah,
Pfizer or
Pfizer,
Moderna?
yeah.
yeah, me too.
Oh,
I got
okay.
Pfizer, but yeah, any reaction? Yeah, you had a reaction?
Just
No.
just a little bit of fatigue for a couple
Yeah,
of
yeah,
days.
yeah.
Nothing bad.
Uh-huh.
On the second shot, nothing on the first. So
Right, right. Yeah, I also I got lucky. I didn't have any reaction. Uh, so okay, and Zach, you managed to get your daughter.
No, I'm still here with her,
Oh,
and
you on
if
the
you look,
phone?
yeah, I'm on the phone. Here, look at me
oh
Oh, oh
with
my
the
God.
mask
All
outside
right.
in a
Yeah.
hotel. That's why
Uh,
I'm picking up my car right now, driving back to New York. But I'm gonna listen to the whole thing and speak whenever. But
sure.
you are the man today. Apologies, and tomorrow I'm gonna be on at 4. Sorry, it's the
Yeah.
whole weekend. It was
Yeah.
like running around like
Right.
crazy,
Right.
but
yeah.
I wouldn't
Hello.
miss it for the world. Hey, Mikhail, how
Hey,
are you?
Zach, where
Hi.
are
Hi.
you?
I am actually in Pittsburgh, picking up my daughter from UPitt. Uh,
Nice. Okay.
yeah,
Pittsburgh. Oh my God.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
University of Pittsburgh. Let me.
So
I don't like.
it's her
I don't
first
like
year,
the.
right? First year.
Yeah, she finished first year. Yeah,
Oh,
Okay. Cool.
finished. She's done with first year.
Hmm.
Uh, driving her back now. As Jesse, how are you?
Yeah. Hi, Jesse. I don't think I know Jesse.
Hello, how are you?
Hi.
She's been coming. I think it's a fourth or
Yeah.
fifth presentation, which is she's a regular now. God bless. Thank you.
I don't know.
People seem to enjoy the stuff. I like. I really like it. That we have
I
such a
hope so.
area of different subjects. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
today's subject. I'm like most. Africa is like a unknown world for me.
Yeah.
Like I really like.
yeah.
That's very unusual subject. Yeah, it's not our usual thing, but let's see who is Rolf. Rolf is joining.
Hmm.
Yeah. Hi, Rolf. How are you?
Hi, Ralph. How are you?
Hey, Ralph.
So
Okay.
we'll see. I guess. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's only 2 minutes. So yeah, let's wait a few more minutes. See.
Let me send out the reminders to people
Yeah.
just to make sure that
Right.
people,
Right.
because sometimes people just, like it's a weekend and waking up, like,
They are just waking up, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Somebody.
exactly.
Hi,
Yeah, if it was
everyone.
my, hi, Beverly, how are you?
Hi,
Thank you.
Beverly.
Hi.
I already know Beverly. Why don't we have to look at the picture? I know it's Beverly.
I just got out of the shower.
Beverly, by the way, like I said, I can always help you out if you want to present, and I really appreciate that stepping up. And it's always good when you have different people, obviously intelligent people like yourself, present and give a different perspective, and it's awesome. Really
Well,
appreciate it.
everyone has set a precedent for me. So, I will do my best. And thank you very much for your support.
Of course. And I'm glad that people are enjoying presenting and and want to step up and it's good. That's we're like a Toastmasters for history.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Hi.
Hello,
Talking about
Maria.
talking about
Happy Workers' Day.
Oh
Right.
yeah,
Yes.
today,
Oh, I
yeah,
know, I know.
We
International
should go on
Labor Day.
demonstration
Right. Well,
with red flags.
Yeah, I'm
where
not
we grew
working
up, yeah,
today.
that's a huge holiday.
They used to say,
How about Former Workers' Day?
Right.
How about Retirees' Day?
That's
Yeah,
We
well,
never retire. We're always
Well,
working.
right.
Right.
Retirees unite. Yeah, we have to have this like.
it used to be, remember the old common 10 of the world unite? They used to say that. Proletarian. It's
Yeah.
horrible.
Yeah,
Right.
I could never forget. I was a kid when that was feed that crap to us in the Soviet Union.
But in Spanish, retirement, the name is jubilación, which means happiness. In English,
Right.
means like you retire from life. In Spanish, is that you are happy. Happiness.
Big difference.
Right.
Very
it should be.
different. Yeah.
Sometimes when you retire, you may not be happy.
Yeah.
Or you may find things that you absolutely never had time to do before. And this is one of them.
Oh, we're glad. We definitely
Yeah.
appreciate.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not even retired and I love this thing.
Oh well, yeah. You need time. Yeah, you need time. So I don't know how you manage that.
I love it. I mean, it's because I'm getting so much information out of this and researching on,
Yeah, yeah. We'll all yeah, always enrich ourselves. That's the idea.
I think that what connects this group is, I think, a lifelong interest and love of learning.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's the most because some people. I know a couple of friends who lose interest. Just I don't know. Maybe it's some kind of like low grade depression. Maybe it's like age, whatever. Some people lose interest to whatever. It's very important to reconnect with what's important for you to learn more about who you are. Because not everybody in touch with all of that. And then, but yeah, some people I know, unfortunately, and yeah, it's pretty sad. But as long as you have curiosity and you want to learn, I mean, you got to learn all life. You got to learn. Even though, like, when I present, I also learn. Yeah, learn from everybody here. Yeah, I don't know what time is it now.
7 after 12.
7 after 12. So I guess maybe we should start. What do you think? Or should we wait for more people? I don't know. Anybody else? Zach, you know, if
They
I don't
can
know.
join us when they come, right?
Right. Yeah, let me start sharing. Yeah,
I know Axum is not a name known to most people, so
yeah. Uh,
it's,
so okay, let me start presenting. Boy, okay. All right. So this is the.
Let me make a quick comment. I've never seen such a merry lion.
Well, it's not exactly merry. Look into his eyes.
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, but somehow still there is some merriment in his face expression.
Yeah. So you see, this is the flag of Ethiopia. I mean, do you see my cursor, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do. Okay. This is the flag of Ethiopia, and this is the line of Judah. This is really a symbol of Ethiopia and line of Judah because there is a connection, as we're going to talk about this. Uh, so the way I structured this presentation is that I have traveled to Ethiopia over 20 years ago, and it's been a very interesting trip. And I made a lot of notes over there and stories. Uh, so I modified, of course, I modified this presentation. I got a little more history and and less of some stories. I still left some stories, but there were some stories that a little bit more personal, may not be very interesting. But I left some stories, so it's going to be like a little bit different. It's not like a pure history, but and there are three major periods that I'd like to present today in the history of Ethiopia. Of course, the Axumite kingdom, which is considered to be the earliest. And then, of course, the period of Lalibela in 12th century CE, Common Era. And of course, also Gondar period, which is Kingdom of Ethiopia, the power moved to the west, to the Gondar area near Lake Tana. That's 16th, 17th century. So, but I'm going to present it not in a chronological order, but rather in the order of my travels, because I'll tell some stories that happened and a little bit about the life in Ethiopia and the people I met. I think it will be interesting. So let me start with some basic facts about Ethiopia. So it starts in prehistoric times. So, and this is the place where a lot of humanids were found, and actually Homo sapiens developed in the rift area within the borders of Ethiopia, which is considered to be kind of a cradle, at least up to now. But certainly the science changing and things may come up lately. I heard there was another find of Homo sapiens in Morocco area, which is earlier. But anyway, so the earliest hominid ever found is found in Ethiopia. It's his name is Ardi or Ardipictus ramidus. It was found about 4.2 million years ago. That's the first known hominid found by scientist, anthropologist Tim White in 1994. But the most well-known hominid that we know is the Australopithecus afarensis, which we call Lucy, and she is also known as Dinkinesh and the specimen was found in 1974 by Professor Donald Johansson, and it's one of the most complete and best preserved adult Australopithecus fossil ever discovered. And it was found approximately 3.2 million years ago. It lived, I'm sorry. So Ethiopia is also considered one of the earliest sites of the emergence of anatomically modern humans, Homo sapiens. And the oldest of these local fossils found in the Omo, what they call Omo remains, were excavated in the southwestern Omo Kibish area. And it have been dated into the Middle Paleolithic age, around 200,000 BC. So the earliest records of Ethiopia appears in ancient Egypt during the Old Kingdom period. So Egyptian traders from about 3000 BC refer to the land south of Nubia or Kush, and they call this land Punt, P-U-N-T, and also they call it Yam sometimes. So the first known voyage to Punt occurred in the 25th century BC under the reign of Pharaoh Sepphoris. The most famous expedition to Punt later on comes during the reign of very famous Queen Hatshepsut. If you remember, this is in 1495 BC, and this expedition was recorded in detailed relief on the temple of Der El-Bari in Thebes. This is I actually been to that temple. It's a temple of Hatshepsut, and so Hatshepsut, as you know,
Quick question.
Yeah, sure. What's the question?
That point, or maybe I'm wrong.
What?
The Axum, land of Punt, Egyptian Pharaoh. During the Intermediate Kingdom, did they refer to the Ethiopia Axum as a land of Punt?
No, yeah, they didn't refer to Axum. They referred it to as land of Punt or Yam. There were two names that they were using. Axum was not known yet. So just wanted to mention Queen Hatshepsut in 15th century BC is the female who assumed false beard and mustache of a man, because female were not allowed to be, but she did it to bring up her son, an heir who was too young, and she wanted to make sure he gets to the proper age to become a pharaoh. So she ruled as a pharaoh. That's what she's famous for, and actually been very successful in that period. So now the state of Sheba, which is mentioned in Old Testament, is sometimes believed to have been in Ethiopia, but it often placed in Yemen, but the old Ethiopia is often shown, and by the way, I do have another map that covers both Yemen and Ethiopia. Let me just see, how do I? Let me go to, do I go? Yeah. Let me go to some, I go through something. I want to show you another map. I'll come back. Yeah, this is the map of ancient Ethiopia. And as you can see, it takes this land of Abyssinia and also land of Yemen right here. So it's supposedly this was what kingdom. This is the Mecca. So, all right, I'm going to go back to my thing. Okay. All right. So now, so the state of Sheba was mentioned in Old Testament. And according to the Ethiopian narrative, best represented, it's called Kebra Nagas. It was written down in 14th century. It's a national epic written in the Ge'ez script by Ihad Nabura of Axum. However, it's been existed in the oral tradition for a long, long time. And this is the book called about the queen, and it tells the story of Queen of Sheba, who went to uh, Jerusalem and actually had an intercourse with King Solomon and bore a child later on when she came back to Ethiopia, called Ibn Melech, and that was the first emperor of Ethiopia, Menelik the First. When he was 22, and that's in this epic. Uh, so when he was 22, Menelik returned to Israel to see his father, uh, who sent him with him the son of high priest Zadok to accompany him back and kind of convert people to Judaism. And he provided him with a replica of Ark of the Covenant. So on his return with some of the Israelite priests, however, he found out that Zadok's son had stolen the real Ark of the Covenant. So uh, if you've seen the movie, the Raiders of the Lost Ark, I mean, we don't know because in Old Testament, the mention of the Ark of the Covenant stops sometimes around like maybe 8th or 9th century, and so nobody knows what is the Ark, where is Ark of the Covenant, but in Ethiopia, believe it or not, majority of population know where it is exactly. You know, supposedly they believe that the Ark is still being preserved today in the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion in Axum, Ethiopia, and actually have visited that church, and I will show you later that church. The tradition uh, 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 that the Queen of Sheba was ruler of Ethiopia in Axum, you know, and then visited Jerusalem and ancient Egypt, is also supported by the first century Jewish historian Josephus Flavius, and he identified in his the Jewish antiquities, he identified Solomon's sister as the queen of Egypt and Ethiopia. That's what he wrote. So now a little bit about the language. Uh, yeah, this is by the way the map of Ethiopia, contemporary Ethiopia, and I'm gonna show. You see my cursor, right? You see it?
Yes.
Okay, good. So, I'm going to show the region where which I visited is really north of Addis Ababa, because that's where you usually fly. So you go, and the Axum is somewhere there, and the Lalibela is right here, and the Gondar is here. There is a mountains here between this, so it's not possible to get from this side to Lalibela. So we actually have to go from the city of Voldia. You know, so this is the area, and this is the area like around the Lake Tana. This is Lake Tana. We'll talk about this later, the source of the Blue Nile. You know, so in this area is called Amhara, and a little bit north Tigrinya, and north of that is Eritrea. You know, and it will be part of the story. So the language is one of the most common languages in Ethiopia is called Amharic language, and this is like in that area. It's a Semitic language, which is a subgroup within Semitic branch of Afro-Asiatic languages, and it is spoken as the first language by Amhara region, and it's kind of lingua franca of the population in Ethiopia in all the major cities. Though this language is it's kind of like a working language of Ethiopia, but there are about 31 million native speakers and 25 million second language, uh, and it's actually second most common language because the other one that has more speakers, the native speakers, is a language called Oromo, and Oromo is in the areas south right here. Okay, and of course there are many other languages that are part of the Ethiopia. There is a Somalian language. There is a Tigrinian, which is up north, and of course Arabic too, because the eastern part is Arabic speaking. Uh, but Amharic currently written left to right, and it's was developed using the system that grew contemporary Ethiopian language grew out of the what we call Ge'ez script. And let me see, this is how the Ge'ez script looks. This is the ancient old script document. You see, this is St. George, by the way, uh, Ethiopian St. George, I guess. But like you could see the script right there. So this script, Ge'ez script, derived from the ancient South Arabian script, which originated in the region around the contemporary Yemen. And the earliest inscriptions of Semitic languages are found in Eritrea and Ethiopia. They date to 9th century BC. By the 1st century AD, this script changed somewhat, was called Old Ethiopic alphabet, and it's actually, they started to write it from right to left. But later on, they changed it back to left to right, and nowadays it's written left to right. So now vocalization of Ge'ez script occurred, apparently how they started to speak according to this language in the 4th century. This is the really blossoming period of Aksumite Empire, and these texts are known from the inscription at the time of the King Izana. You can talk to that about that. And also we also found the script on the coin that preceded Izana, on king preceding him, called Waziba of Axum. All right, so now I'm gonna start. Well, this is. Okay.
Yeah, if I could just add, Ethiopic script is very unusual in the Semitic languages because they do write the vowels consistently, and they probably got the idea from India, Indian merchants, because structurally the Old South Arabic script only indicated the consonants, but then the Ethiopians started adding. This is the letter D right here, and that little, oh, you can't see my cursor. The little strokes you see around the consonantal letters indicate the vowels, and Indian scripts do something very similar. So it's likely the Ethiopians got the idea from them. But this was all based on a lot of the trading routes across the Indian Ocean.
Okay, so now I'll start I'll go a little bit up just to show you the map. So I'll start now my travel story, and we'll go along some of the historical facts and along the way. So I came there with my friend. We just traveled on our own. We had backpacks. That was in the year of 1999. So yeah, long time ago. And so we arrived to Addis Ababa. You see it's right in the center. And being, of course, you mobbed by local cab drivers in the airport. Yep.
Can I speak Did you go for, why, what was your interest in going to Ethiopia? What did you know about Ethiopia?
Well, I read a lot of books. I did research. I mean, most of the stuff I'm going to tell you, you will see. I already knew some of them. I read very interesting book called The Sign and the Seal by Graham Hancock. I'm going to mention later on. That gives you a lot of interesting information. There are very interesting periods that besides Axumite Kingdom, I did know about Axumite Kingdom and Keber and Agas and the connection to the Old Testament and Philoshus, obviously we knew, but also there is very interesting the conversion to Christianity and the 12th century, the probably the most dramatic and picturesque and like stunning place in the whole Ethiopia would be Lalibela that I will show you, and that's by the way you've seen the one of the temples, the Sorokian temples, and I really wanted to see them. That you know, my travels basically was defined by, you know, the wonders of the world, the most interesting cultures. Ethiopia is very little known, underappreciated. It is really amazing. Okay, anybody else has questions or additions? All right, so we'll continue. So we came, and because I already read about this, though, by the way, at the time there weren't too many books about that. So I had to. There was one which is not very precise. Obviously, in '99 we didn't have smartphones. We didn't have. Yeah, the internet was kind of just developing. Yeah, we used the internet a little bit, but nothing. You know, it's like you completely disconnected. It's like different life. So. Um, so we went to area called Piazza, which is you know, it used to be Italian colony, which is like entertainment area where there are a lot of bars, a lot of things. You also we have to be careful because Ethiopia in the plateau, and it is about 2,400 meters above the sea level, which is like about over 7,000 feet above the sea level. So there is a little bit of altitude, jet lag. There are all kinds of you know, things. So I had to really consider it. So we went to see the bar, one of the bars. We decided to go. By the way, the tourists at that time were particular, like very few. My tourist visa was number 350 something, which means that in April when we came here late April, that was I was number 350 from the in 3 4 months. There were only 350 people visited Ethiopia. You know, that's like at that time tourism was not developed there at all. So and so it's like we decided to step into the bar, and I was like really you know, think that people were like very curious about us because we were like completely like from different world. So and there are a lot of we stepped in. There are a lot of people. You know, they're like music. They're sitting, standing, talking, drinking, dancing. You know, and as soon as we walked in, the music stopped, and everybody turned and looked at us. It was kind of surreal. So waiter immediately made the best table in the middle of the room available for us because you, as a foreigner, you'll get a special respect. And so they invited us to sit down, and as soon as we sit down, the music started to play louder, light turned brighter, all people start talking, you know, drinking, dancing, kind of all, you know. So we, of course, you know, celebrated our arrival, but in the morning it was terrible hangover, I have to say. But considering the altitude and the jet lag, so my friend, he's been traveling a lot in Africa and then in general. So he said that in order to avoid cultural shock in all its intensity, you have to leave the big city as soon as possible. So like in the morning, we just dragged ourselves to bus station and it was like total mess. There were like no order, like absolute chaos. People, bosses, they all just like kind of like move slowly, around, and they just screaming the name of towns where they're going. I mean, it was like, uh, so we just started to scream some towns that we knew on our way, and then the people waved to us, and so we got in one bus, and it was like packed. So there are benches like for two seats, and there are like 3 or 4 people, managed to sit in those benches. Uh, and so we traveled, and like once we got out of the city, you cannot imagine there is no payment on the road. So you just go with a speed of like maybe, you know, 25 miles an hour, and it's like shaking. Everything is like crazy. There are no pavements. It's going slow all over. I mean, there are roads, but no pavements. And it's like, oh my God, after 5 hours of this traveling, we just like had a headache. We got it like the first, known town, and it was the town called Deze, which is right here. And we got out from there, and then we went to some place to stay, some guest house. They didn't even have hotels there. And then later on, we went to eat, and we met Ethiopian military pilot in a guest house. And the reason we managed to speak to him because he spoke Russian very well, and I grew up in Russia. So and apparently he studied in Frunze Academy, which is it was in the Soviet Union. It was part of the Middle Asia area. I think it was the capital of Kyrgyzstan. And so he told us about his life in Russia, his girlfriend. So we kind of talked. And then he started to talk about his missions to Eritrea. So at that time when we were going, there were like U.S. government warning that there is a like border conflict between Eritrea and Ethiopia. But from what he was telling us, it looks like it's a full-blown war going on. And that's why I wonder that there were no tourists there, because we didn't realize that they're like in the middle of the war. But obviously, it's not like Ethiopia is a big country. Eritrea is not, so it's probably Eritreans suffered much more. So the reason this war started, it really goes back to relationship. So Tigrania and Eritreans, which is up north here, like in this area, this is Tigray, and Eritrea, you don't see it, but it's the one that connects to the Red Sea, because Ethiopia doesn't have a port. It's all part of the Eritrea. So those two minorities took very active part in the resisting of the communist regime of Mengistu, who took power in 1974. It kind of ended the dynasty. The last emperor of Ethiopia was Haile Selassie, Rastafarian. So he took over, and he, with the help of Soviet Union, he started the communist regime. And there was a war for independence from Eritreans, and a lot of people resisted. And eventually, he managed to keep it until 1991, which is just 8 years earlier than we arrived. And then he was crushed and escaped to Zimbabwe. And Ethiopia became a democratic country with strong Tigrayan and Eritrean element in the government. And Eritrea wanted an independence from Ethiopia. It's actually happened that in 1962, at the time of the Haile Selassie, the government of Ethiopia annulled Eritrean parliament and formally annexed Eritrea. So they were kind of a separate country at the time when they were governed by Italians and then later on British. And that, so they were an independent country. Now they were forcefully joined to Ethiopia, and actually in 1961 they started the Eritrean Liberation Front, and they fought Eritrean War of Independence, and then they joined. Yes.
Yes, sorry. when did Ethiopia lost access to the coast? Was then?
In 1991. Yeah, that's exactly when they got rid of Mengistu. At this time, Eritreans said that we were a separate country, and since they participated very actively and they lost a lot of people, and they made an agreement, and in 1991 they became an independent country. They were kind of brotherly nation. There are a lot of mixed marriages, everything, and they became and all the trades were going through the Eritrean ports, but they had agreement and everything. But in 1991, the economic situation worsened, and the Eritrean raised taxes tremendously, and that's what really caused this war, because now Ethiopia suddenly they just decided to raise taxes, and all the trades are going through the ports of Eritrea. The Ethiopians were dependent, and they wanted to suppress that. So, and then they started, it's escalated into the war. And when we were in Ethiopia, there was some English language papers, and Ethiopian propaganda were like saying this, that Eritrea, treacherously attacked Ethiopia and this and that. But obviously, when you look at the sizes, like Eritrea is like 10 times less than Ethiopia. It's like really looks strange. Well,
but that's, I mean, losing access to the coast.
yes, that's right.
Right?
But that's how it was before 1962 anyway. They were under the British rule in until 52, and then they became joined Ethiopia as a federated state, and 10 years later Ethiopia just simply annexed them. So they always felt that they were forcefully joined to Ethiopia, and they always wanted to separate. They happened to fight against communist regime with the rest of the Ethiopians, and in 91 finally they were granted this. And now, 8 years later, there is a war between Ethiopia and Eritrea. And of course, it's a pretty devastating war. They're, they're brotherly nations, but now because of the economic situation. So now, in a couple of days, we stayed here for like a day or two, and then we got finally to this city, Voldia. Like here it says Veldia, but actually on the other map it was Voldia. And that's where, from there, we knew that we had to get to Lalibela. It's somewhere in this area. Okay, so Lalibela is, of course, the most important, the most interesting area. So Lalibela is famous for the famous for 12th century rock-hewn churches. And it's located about 150 kilometers into the mountains of the main road from the city of Voldia.
This is the book.
What?
Sorry.
Okay. All right. So, and we wanted to get there before the rain season, because when the rain season starts, it's impossible to get there because all the roads, So in the hotel, we met a boy, Mark. He was about 14 years old. And he approached us. He spoke some English. And he said he's riding back to, he's from Lalibela. He's riding back to Lalibela with two of his relatives. And he offered a ride in a car. Like, we pay for it, but otherwise it was very difficult to get there. And he also offered to be our guide in town. And we knew that you have to select the guide. Otherwise, they're going to be all over you until you select one. And we often pick the boys and everything. So we kind of liked the boy. He kind of like entrepreneurial spirit. So we agreed on the price. So, and then we went with them to Ethiopia. So, and Mark was telling us this story that he was the eldest son in a family, and his father was a very brutal man, left his wife a few years ago, which is very common practice, obviously. And the responsibility to support the whole family fell on him. He was like still a kid. So he learned some English in school, and through interaction with tourists also. And then he started this business as a guide, despite like fierce competition, racketeering. There's all this thing that we've observed a bit. So the tourists are very scarce in Ethiopia. So it's really, really heavy competition. And Lalibela is also rather remote. It's hard to get there. It is really a pearl of archaeology. One of his business techniques was to go to Volvia and get some friends or relatives with them, and then finding paying passengers back and his people he would guide for. Um, so later on, I've seen Mark, by the way, while we were going to see some church, come out, and I see him in tears a few times because he was suffered from jealous competitors. There were a lot of guides, and they would just like, probably hit him or something. So, but as soon as we entered the town, Lalibela, nobody, uh, you know, everybody left us alone because they knew that we are Mark's guys. So he's going to be one. So the road to Lalibela was very rough. So we got into American-made mini truck, and most of the time we traveled through almost unmarked territory. If there was a road, it was totally covered with all kinds of rocks and everything, and we crossed dried up rivers and drove on the rock edges with magnificent views. And this was the first time I realized what American trucks are made for. I just could never imagine that the car could sustain so much punishment. It was amazing. We were just going. So now, what is this name Lalibela? So Lalibela, the town or city of Lalibela, is called by the name of the king who actually built all those temples. So Lalibela was a younger brother of a ruling king of Zagwe dynasty. This dynasty wrestled the power from the queen Judith, or maybe Judith, of the Lashal's line in 10th century. So they wrestled. So Judith was a champion of Jewish portion of the Ethiopian population at the time, and she brought about dark ages with wars and destruction of Christian civilization. And at that time, Axumite kingdom was finished. The power shifted to Lalibela. And so she probably represents a few generations of rulers in 9th and 10th centuries. And Lalibela lived in 12th century and is known as a golden age of Ethiopian Orthodox Church. So as a baby, he was covered with beads. His mother took it as a sign, divine sign, that he is destined to be king, since the bees recognized him as such. The name Lalibela is derived from the word lal, that means a bee. His ruling brother did not appreciate Lalibela's rising fame and attempted to poison him. Lalibela fell into lethargic state for 3 days, and then Jesus Christ appeared to him and ordered him to build the churches. So later, when he awakened, Lalibela was in hiding, and he left Ethiopia and he lived in Jerusalem at the time of the Crusaders, exactly 12th century. And there are all kinds of like circumstantial evidence. There is a lot of theories. It's a kind of semi-legendary story. I mean, although the churches are there, the temples are there. So there he was introduced to the Order of Templars. And the Order of Templars was formed in part on the drive to the search of Holy Grail and Ark of the Covenant. And because they heard that the Ark of the Covenant possibly is in Ethiopia, they were very interested because they already, it was a, Kebra Nagast was in an oral form at the time. So they heard these stories. So about it was taken by King of Sheba, no, not King of her son from Solomon Menelik I. So the warrior monks from Order of Templars were also known as later on we know Freemasons. So they actually there is some theories that they're the ones who helped Lalibela to attain Ethiopian crown and build a complex of rock-hewn churches. So now I want to show you some of these churches. Okay. So this is the most famous one. So you see, it's in the form of the cross all the way down. There are entrances from each side. It's actually, so the reason they call it rock-hewn churches, that means that they were built from a solid rock. They're carved out of solid rock. The the outside was carved and the interior were carved inside, and chambers were created. It's all out of the solid rock. So that's why it's so unique. So this is me back there in the front of the church on top of it. Here is some of the passages. There are a lot of churches. It's a whole complex. So Lalibela is the very little changed actually in 800 years, because nothing in that area where the old churches, now nothing is built there since then. They're just restoring some stuff. One of the things that I've encountered there, yeah, these are the churches. I'm showing you different pictures of churches. Um, so the swarms of loud and obnoxious flies are always around. And, when I was there, I used to, yeah, that's me. I'll move on its own. And this is, by the way, Mark and his assistant. That's our guide. So this is, yeah. Okay. This is another one of those churches. So like I always, like when I watch on TV, I often see like kids and there are like flies all over their face. They don't bother to get rid of them. And first I did try to get rid of them, but it's absolutely impossible. After a while, you just realize they just immediately go in. They immediately there on your face again. I guess they're looking for the liquid, which is in your eyes, I guess, and in your face. So I think. So actually, at some point, you just have to get like, okay, it's there. You just get used to it and don't bother. So again, so you see that all of these churches, they carved out of the rocks and the with all interiors. So that's why it's so fascinating. This is another picture of this. You see the windows in very interesting form, very typical. There's nothing like that in the whole world. Okay, so now I have to stop this somehow.
Except in Petra.
No, there's nothing like that in Petra.
Well, it's not that impressive, but Petra also, these structures are carved out of the rock.
Yes, some of the structures carved on the rock, but the thing is that it's not the churches that are carved in rock. It's places where they bury people. This is the churches, and they are operating even nowadays. They've been operating for the 800 years. People go in there, they pray. There are a lot of rituals. This is a live city. Petra is a dead city. There is nobody living there. So yeah, it is also carved in a rock, some of it, but I meant there is nothing like it. There are distinction about this place that there is nothing like it in the whole world. People carve, in many places, different things, but nobody done anything. And also the style, this has all been done in 12th century AD. So, by the way, what also interesting is that they also developed the very interesting art of very elaborate crosses, of various designs, also unique to Ethiopia. So this is the cross of Lalibela, and at the time when I was there, this is golden cross. It's made of gold, completely made of gold. So at the time I was there, it was stolen. and later on it was found in Belgium and returned. But can you imagine it's stolen? You know, very valuable and old cross. Yeah, these are different cross designs. You see how like interesting they are. They just like all kinds of like I don't think anybody else doing anything to such extent, you know, in order to decide. So so our guide Mark had an assistant. He's like 11-year-old boy, and he was actually um, he was our shoe bearer. So there are very interesting things. It's in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. There are some customs there that have been forgotten by the rest of the Christianity, but because the church was cut off from the mainstream for almost 1,000 years, they have a very unique way. Like one thing is, in order to in order to go to the church, you have to take off your shoes. This is something that this is something that Muslims do. You know, this is very unusual. You have to take off your shoes. Then also, believe it or not, they do circumcision still, and they don't eat pork. So it is like really very much connected to Judaism still, because uh, uh, in the beginning, you know, when they converted, the majority of population were Galatians, and once they converted, they did not get rid of circumcision and the custom of eating pork. In the mainstream Christianity, St. Paul argued that they have to get rid of it because majority of the population were Greeks and they would have never give up eating pork and they wouldn't go um, for circumcision, of course. Uh, but in Ethiopian church, these are still going, you know, circumcision, not eating pork, and taking shoes off before entering the church. So as a result, you know, because it's a very poor country, right? It's not very, you don't want to leave your shoes outside; they'll be stolen. So that's why we had this 11-year-old assistant who would be guarding our shoes when we go in there. So um, and I actually also wonder where the Muslims got this idea about taking off shoes, because we know from Quran how the first hijrah happened. So hijrah is migration. So it happened twice in the year 613 and 615. This is the escape of Muhammad followers, escape of Muhammad followers from Mecca to Axum. The second hijrah was escape from Mecca to Medina, but this is prior to that. So they came to King of Axum, and they realized that their Christianity is, very close to what Muhammad is teaching, and they were very surprised, very similar things.
Right?
So later, yes.
And do the women are separate from the man in the church, or they are all together?
Actually, you know what? I went into the church not at the time of the. I don't think no, I don't think they are separated. I'm not honestly. I'm not sure. I didn't pay attention to that. You know, so it's hard for me to say. But I've seen women there praying outside of the church together with men. Inside, I didn't see. I didn't see. So um, so they yes. Anybody wants to say anything? I want to stop this for a second. Okay. All right. Uh, please, if you have any questions or want to add something, go ahead.
Well, I notice in the mosque, always you are separated as women.
Yes, yes, I know. I'm sorry. Yeah, I kind of like I don't want to give you wrong information. I'm not sure. But anyway, so uh, we also like were surprised in Ethiopia. Just to give you the idea, that when we traveled to Ethiopia, we traveled in the year of 1999, but we arrived in the year of 1991, and that we just couldn't believe this, but actually, yeah. So apparently, the Ethiopian calendar is very different from from our regular, and they have about 7 or 8 years difference. And this gap developed between Ethiopian and Gregorian calendar. You know, Gregory, Pope Gregory the 13th in 1582 did changes to the Julian calendar, but this difference with Ethiopian calendar that always was there is because I looked into it. It's resulted due to alternative calculations in determining the date of Annunciation. Yeah, the date
If
of
you're in Ethiopia today, what year is that? Or that's
minus 7 or 8 years.
so
right now.
They keep doing that.
Well, they obviously they do both because they have to operate, you know, internationally as well. They have their own Ethiopian calendar, and they also have the calendar that everybody uses. But by Ethiopian calendar, you know, it's about 7. So, you know, Annunciation date is it's the date of announcement by Archangel Gabriel to Virgin Mary that she would conceive Jesus Christ. So, but the way they calculate it is different. That's why they developed such a difference. Also, the time in Ethiopia is shifted 6 hours. So it started at 6 a.m. So let's say 1 a.m. by our times would be 7 a.m. 1 a.m. in Ethiopian times would be 7 a.m. by our times. So because they generally live from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. is the day, and from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. is the night. And they're close to equator. You know, there's not noticeable change of seasons. So it does make sense, you know, according to them. And also, when we went to the churches, they performed the services. The monks they sing very ancient chants of Saint Yared. So Saint Yared was a Christian composer and priest who lived in the 6th century AD, and he composed those chants. You know, we have the earliest chants we know is the Gregorian chants that, you know, also, you know, that was developed much later, but prior to Gregorian was Ambrosian chants, you know, so we kind of like, this is the music, there was no, people couldn't write the music, it was just orally passed, so you kind of keep, and I have, I hope I could go into this thing to give you an example of it. Let's see if it goes. Okay, 50 seconds. You hear it, right?
No.
You can't hear it?
No.
Oh man, that's too bad.
You have to sing yourself.
I have to sing. How do I sing?
You know, Greg,
myself?
actually, you need to take your headphones off. You need to take your headphones off. They'll hear it.
Ah,
Take your head.
okay. All right, thank you.
No, you mean unplug the headphones, not from the ears.
I got it. Let me try that. Let's see if it works now.
Yes,
You
it
hear it?
works.
No, I don't hear it.
Yeah. Obviously, not right here. You see, you have no headphones.
No, can you hear it? Anything?
Yes, we can hear you. But it's not loud enough, though. You gotta bring up this the voice.
Well, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can
sorry.
hear you.
I don't think you could hear it. No, you can't. I can hear it, but you don't, right?
No, if you take your headphones off, we can hear it.
I did take it, but
When we
somehow.
we heard it. We heard it.
Oh, you heard it?
When you take it up. Yeah, we did.
Oh, okay. Let me give you a little more.
Maybe in the car. So cute. I'm just gonna ask you all.
We're gonna show her food. We're gonna order.
Okay. So you heard it, right?
We're gonna show her food.
Yeah.
So, yeah, do you hear me now?
Yes, we hear
Yeah,
you.
okay. So you got an idea what this is like, right?
We have to go there.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So so that's the that's the how they sing. Um, so now let me tell you. So let me tell you about the Ethiopian church. So it's been cut off from Christianity for over 1,000 years after collapse of Roman Empire in the 5th century, and even more so after Arab conquest of Syria and North Africa and Spain in 7th century. And the closest relation has to do with the Egyptian Coptic church, which also was kind of cut off from the mainstream. And the majority of people were quickly went into Islam, but still Coptic church exists even now. So Ethiopian Christians are monophysites. So what does that mean? It means that it's one of the Christian schisms condemned by the Council of Chalcedon in 451 AD. And it mostly has to do that monophysites believe in the singular nature of God, of Christ, not God, of Christ, which is divine versus dual nature of divine and human. I mean, the mainstream religion, Christianity see Christ as has dual nature. This is monophysites. The Ethiopians cross themselves by holding index finger up and thumb towards yourself, indicating relationship between you and God, who is one and the same as Christ. So the modern Christians using 3 fingers to cross yourself, representing Trinity of the God, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Monophysites only use 1 finger to yourself, thumb to yourself, um, and the index finger up, showing to the God in you. So it's representing again the singular nature of God, who is the same as Christ. So there were actually very few tourists in this town of Lalibela. They're like, you've seen this area where the churches are. There are many churches there, all of them built in 12th century. So, but around it there is a small town, and there are a few tourists there. One Scottish couple from Scotland, 2 German engineers doing some survey. So they were surveying roads, and the French guy who actually took a sabbatical and was traveling for a year through Africa by himself. Interesting guy. So, and since it's a small town, there was only one restaurant in the whole town, and we always ran into each other, spent some time together. So, the restaurant, by the way, called by the name of Lalu, which is called means a heat. It's very simple, cozy. Uh, and besides tourists, the clients were the most successful and wealthy citizens of the city.
Greg, how did you do with the language?
Well, believe it or not, a lot of it's sign language, but often you find, kids learn English in school and they love to interact with foreigners, and all of them, and some of them speak a little bit of English. So we had this guide, Mark, who spoke some English, and he was translating, and we were like, but otherwise, you'd be amazed how much you can achieve with the sign language. People do understand a lot, but that was like probably the most linguistically challenged trip I ever had in my life. So So the food usually served on injera. I don't know if you ever been to Ethiopian restaurants, only that because this is like a thin pancake made of a grain, which is unique to Ethiopia. And usually
Your
some,
hands, right?
I
You eat with your hands.
eat with your hands. Yeah, there was like on top of it, usually some spicy meat or vegetables served on top of injera. And then you just, yeah, get a little bit of injera, put on top of the meat and with your hands. Yeah, no utensils. Um, and the most popular dish called kaiwat, which is a spicy lamb with a bone. And so our guide Mark told us that when kaiwat rarely served in his family because they're poor in his house, and his father had a right to the bone. This is like only the most important person, the bone with the bone, just like the bone marrow, is like the most honorable thing. And everybody was waiting until he starts to eat. The whole family usually, that's their custom. And I remember that in the last day in Lalibela, when we paid our 14-year-old guide, Mark, you know, uh, he came to this restaurant and ordered this meal for himself and ate his bone like a man and then paid for a very expensive meal. And I'm sure the whole town heard about it, probably. So one little event happened there. So Mark with his little assistant, took us to a local bar. We were treated like honored guests, and the bar girls looked very invitingly. They danced and asked us to dance, and and we kind of like all dance, but they have a very interesting national dance. Like we called it like chicken dance. So I have also a little thing. It's kind of like with the humor and grace. The girls were dancing, everybody was dancing. Of course, we tried. They were very friendly. So let me see if I could show you this Ethiopian dance. It's actually danced by professionals, but that was very similar.
Greg, we want to see you doing it.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Did you hear the dance? Did you see it?
we heard it a little bit, yeah.
Okay, good, good. All right. So now, okay, this is the Ethiopian map, ancient Ethiopian map. Like that's the territory, So I imagine that. Yeah, hold on a second. I imagine that this is the. Mm, mhm. Okay. Before we go further, I want to tell you about another funny story that happened to us. So Mark, our guide, he asked us like, why you don't give like money to poor, starving children, And we said, well, you can't feed them all, and if you give to a few, the others would mob you. I mean, it's like really, you know. But then we were kind of embarrassed by this, so we changed like to some local coins and gave it to Mark. I said, well, you go ahead, you do it. So half an hour later, we're sitting in a cafe and we see Mark running like crazy towards cafe and just throwing money over his shoulders. And there is like, I don't know, hundreds of children screaming, running after him. He's throwing money. And we were just like, oh my God. So he ran into the cafe and hidden behind my chair. And it was like all like shaking, and finally, but the kids couldn't enter the cafe because the adults were like, no, no, go away. So I guess he learned that lesson, but that was very funny. I mean, I couldn't believe it, how it all happened. So the next day we got in the bus on the route to Axum. So now we're going into the Axum. So the the Axum is the center of an early Christian kingdom that flourished in the 4th century AD. The kingdom itself existed approximately from 880 BC to 825 AD. So it became a major player on the commercial route between Roman Empire and ancient India. And the prophet Mani, regarded, Mani was very famous religion, kind of a mixture of Zoroastrianism and Christianity in the 3rd century AD. It was exterminated later on after Mani was killed by the Sassanids. This is a Persian. They felt that he perverted the Zoroastrianism, and also he was Parthian, and Sassanids took over power from Parthian Empire in the 3rd century.
Yeah, sorry. Why in the map there's a connection between Africa and Arabia, South Arabia?
Yeah, this is the connection. You see this? This is the Red Sea. This is the lower end of Red Sea, and this is the Saudi Arabia, and this is the Africa.
So you could walk from Africa to South Arabia?
No, not now. I don't know. Maybe in the 15,000 years ago, maybe you could, but not now. Maybe 50,000 years ago you could. No, now you cannot. It's a strait.
Right.
No, but the way they showed it, I mean, this is the ancient map. I mean, obviously it's a strait right now. But if you recall the Red Sea, and this is the southern part of it, and then it goes into the I think it's Arabian Sea, right, and into Indian Ocean. Okay, so now we're going to Axum. So Mani, who lived in the 3rd century, he at that time he wrote, and those writings survive, that there are 4 great powers at his time. This is 3rd century AD. And Axum was one of them, and the other one being Persia, Rome, and China. So Axumites erected monumental stelae or obelisks, which served as a religious purpose in the pre-Christian times. And one of these granite columns were later, like the largest one is 90 feet tall. It's really unique because it's made from the one stone. It's not made of the parts. It's made from the whole stone. I will show you later about this. But right now, I'd like to tell you about the Christianization of Axum Kingdom. So under King Izana, who ruled in 320 to 360, this is the 4th century AD, Axum adopted Christianity. So we arrived very late and like to Axum, like went to a hotel. But next morning we went to the main square and immediately surrounded by a group of boys aspiring to be our guides. This is very typical. They all wanted to be guides, and you have to actually pick one, otherwise you'll never get rid of them. And they were the only people who spoke English, and we learned a lot of local information through them. So, and Axum also was very close to the border with Eritrea. It's really like maybe 10 kilometers from the border. And we learned that we're the only, like my friend and I, we're the only tourists in town. There are no other tourists at all. So everyone else stayed away, and as most buses were requisitioned for troop movements, and airplanes were flying overhead on their missions, and since Ethiopia used to be like a communist country and retained the connection with Russia, they used Russian weapons, so they needed a lot of Russian advisors. So, and there were a lot of Russian consultants present there, Russian officers. I don't know, maybe a private or whatever. So we decided to present ourselves as Russians because we thought we will get more kind of sympathy.
Greg?
Yeah.
Sorry, the church that you are showing looks very Russian to me, kind of.
No, it's not. It's not. It's no, it's not. It's an old church. I will talk about this church later on. It's a 17th century church. This is the church where the Ark of the Covenant is stored. But I will talk about this. So I just want to tell you the story. So the boys filled us on all these like military advisors, their habits, their sexual habits, which girls they're sleeping, and like they knew everything. It was crazy. So so we selected one older boy to be our guide, and there was a lot to see. So this is the Ethiopian Orthodox Church claims to be the church. This is the church of Our Lady Mary of Zion in Axum, and this church claims that they still have the original biblical Ark of the Covenant, and it lies in this covenant like Ark where the 12 tablets originally lies. And we visited this church. There was another church built in 1950. I don't have it here. This is the old one. There was a little museum there, uh, and uh, they assigned guide to tell us about different artifacts. And when I asked the guy, where is the ark stored? He pointed to one of the chambers, said, well, nobody can see it except the guardians, whose position is sacred and hereditary. It's a family that son becomes the guardian of the Ark of the Covenant. I mean, nobody else, even priests cannot see it. Nobody can see it except the guardians. And this only one family done it for centuries. So, and when I said, well, what about if I'll just walk in and take a look? He said, the guy like almost fainted. He said, are you kidding? They're going to kill you right away. That said, like would be a huge sacrilege. Even priests cannot see it. Uh, um, and I read about it a lot in that book that I mentioned, The Sign and the Seal, highly recommended by Graham Hancock. Um, and he wrote in details about all that. So the old church, this church, was originally built in the 4th century AD, and it was rebuilt a few times, obviously, and the last time was in the 17th century. That's how it looks in 17th century, and let me see. I actually have another picture that of me on the other side of this church. Okay. Okay. So now I'm going to talk about who converted Ethiopia into Christianity. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but his name is Saint Frumentius. Okay, so he was a Syro-Phoenician Greek born in the city of Tyre, which is in Lebanon right now. But at that time, it was part of the province of Syria, Roman province of Syria. And Frumenti and his brother Edesius, as a kids, accompanied their uncle Metropius on a voyage to Ethiopia. When their ship stopped at one of the harbors on the Red Sea, the people of the neighborhood massacred the whole crew, with the exception of 2 boys who were taken as slaves to the king of Axum. The 2 boys soon gained the favor of king, who raised them to the position of trust, and shortly before his death, he gave them liberty. The widowed queen, however, prevailed upon them to remain at the court and assist her in education of a young heir, the future king Izana. Uh, you recall I said he ruled from 320 to 360. And in the administration of the kingdom during the prince minority, because they were educated, they were raised, you know. So they remained, and especially Frumenti was very active, and they used their influence to spread Christianity. So later, Frumenti traveled to Alexandria, where he requested the Patriarch of Alexandria, Athanasius. Yeah, just a moment. Okay. So he instructed the Athanasius, not instructed, requested to send a bishop to Ethiopia with some priests to help him in conversion. So Athanasius, after speaking to Frumentius, he decided that he is probably the most suitable person for the purpose. He realized that he's sincere in his beliefs, he has a lot of influence with the king, and he speaks fluent Amharian language. So in 328 AD, he consecrated Frumentius as a bishop and sent him back to Ethiopia. So Athanasius, by the way, this is the one who just became Patriarch of Alexandria in that same year. Okay, he is the one who 3 years earlier defended the concept of Trinity from Bishop Arius at the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. And, you know, so he actually was very famous. At the time, he had a long, this is when only he started as a patriarch. He was deacon during the Council of Nicaea, and now he's still fairly young, maybe 30 years old, and now he had a long career, became very famous patriarch. So now Frumentius returned to Ethiopia and erected his episcopal see at Axum, baptized King Izana, who had meanwhile succeeded to the throne, and built many churches and spread Christianity through Ethiopia. So this is, by the way, Saint Frumentius. His image, we don't really know how he looked like, but at least that's how he is depicted nowadays. So in the 4th century AD, he converted. So the other important site is the area of giant obelisks, or stelae, they call them. Okay, so this is the park where they kept all the stelae. And again, the oldest of this, like a much smaller one, date from, believe it or not, 5,000 to 2000 BC. So they were pre-Christian. They used for some religious purposes. Later on, they continued this tradition, and in the 4th century, the 6th century, this was like really the golden years of Christian kingdom of Axum. You know, they built many more, and you see in some of them fell, of course, broken, but they built from the solid rock, all of them. So in 1937, a 24-meter tall, 1700-year-old obelisk of Axum, broken into 5 parts and lying on the ground. And it was found and shipped by Italian soldiers to Rome at the time of Mussolini occupation. And it stayed in Rome, that obelisk, and is widely regarded one of the finest example of engineering from the height of Axumite Empire. So let me show you another picture. So this is, I am at one of these obelisks, and this is the obelisk that was taken to Rome, and it wasn't there when I was there in '99, but 3 years later, in 2002, it was repatriated back to Axum, and this is the picture of it back in Axum now.
Greg, just a question. Is this made out of carved out of a single rock, or are they blocks piled on top of each other?
Single rock.
Okay, it is curious because it's carved in a way that makes it look like the
That's right.
rocks. And I guess that's not unusual, is it? They'll take something that's totally new and make it look like something more conventional or something older. I mean, it's odd that you would take a single stone and then carve lines in it to make it look like it's separate stones piled on top of each other.
Hmm. Yeah, but it is known that this obelisk are well known for being built from the solid rock. I mean, this what they're famous for, and that's why it's such a phenomenon because it is not like the ones that built in Egypt. They're very different, and this is tradition, very old, 1,000 years old traditions. I'm talking about the earliest one, the smaller ones are from almost 5,000 years ago, 5,000 years BC.
How do they do this? I mean, how do they, is there any idea how they can do something like this?
Uh, I don't know. I don't have. I didn't get into the methods. Maybe there is something you could look into about that. I personally don't know. Yeah, I agree. It does look like but let's say if you look at the wait a second. If you look at this one, yeah, you see it doesn't. It's just carved like this, but you don't really. Yeah, some of them completely. Yeah. Anyway, so okay, so
What we
that
see
that
in the ground is a column that fell, or what is it?
well, this one is fell, and when I was there, it was still. There are many of them fell. I mean, obviously they've been standing there for thousands of years. Some of them fell, some of them still standing. One of the fallen one was taken. The one that I showed. Well, this one is one of the tallest there that was still standing, local. This one is the one that originally fell and broken into pieces, but the Italians brought it to Rome, and it was in Rome for many years until the year 2002. It was they put it
Hmm.
together, and
So
they
Greg, is that a door at the base?
uh, it is a door, but you cannot enter it. It's a symbolic door. They're
Ah,
not they're not hollow. They're solid. It's a symbolic door. That was used for rituals, something, but it's not a. You cannot. There's not. You can't enter it. Not, it's a false door.
It's like the false door of the Egyptians too.
Yeah. So we also went to like mountains with this guy to see some distant churches in the mountains and all kinds of ceremonies. There were like crowd of people dressed white. It was kind of pretty interesting. So in the evening we went to like one of the biggest hotels there in town for dinner, and we met one of these Russian officers who said hello in Russian to us and watched us, suspiciously. So I thought like, well, it's kind of odd. So
Right?
later, yeah,
Sorry. How is the housing, the regular housing? I mean, is uh, detached housing, or I mean, how
well,
do
um, it's in Addis Ababa there are some contemporary buildings like apartment buildings, but in the small towns they're often like small houses, maybe two, three
it's like
stories.
one story? Okay.
One story, two stories, maybe three stories, but nothing tall. So so after like meeting this officer, like the next day, you know, went to the or that same day we went to the main square and they were surrounded by local boys, and they usually tell us all the news that's going on, all the gossips, everything. So they told us that these Russian officers they want to arrest us for questioning. They thought that we are American spies. So apparently they went into the hotel uh, that we stayed in, and and there we presented American passports. We were speaking Russian, so they was like, and so we figured like, well, we gotta get out of here next day. There's only one bus a day there. So we came to the bus stop next day, like maybe half an hour before the bus coming. And when the bus comes, there's a whole crowd. There's no order or anything. Everybody's trying. The bus only opens the back door, and everybody tries to get in. And I was just trying to like get in, and then somehow always there was some big guy with his back against me. I just couldn't move forward, and I figured it's on purpose. They just were trying to prevent us from boarding the bus, you know. So I don't know. So I went out of the crowd, and then I went to the front door because everybody front door usually doesn't open. So I went to the front door and I look at the guide and I said, "Well, open the front door." And the driver, you know, because I'm a white guy, they usually it's so rare that you get like special kind of respect. So they called us Farangi, foreigner. You know, they always call Farangi home. So he opened the front door, so I got in, and then I called my friend just and telling him in Russian, nobody understands, get to the front door. So he got front door, so we got in the bus and got out of there. But definitely we felt that somebody's trying to prevent us from getting on the bus. So, and we decided to go to Simeon Mountains. This is like a huge mountains and a national park, uh, uh, amazing, huge territory. And we just went for trekking. So we ride through our office there, and they gave us a mountain horse. It's like very, very small horse to carry our gear, and a horse driver with it because the guy who has to like, you know. And then they gave us a guard with an AK-47, you know, with automatic weapon. This is like, well, why do we need it? You need it. I mean, they just like, they want to make sure that the tourists are safe because it's in the middle of the war, you know, with Eritrea, and also there are all kinds of animals and who knows, all kinds of tribes. There are white tribes still living in some armed man, who knows. So anyway, horse was so small and skinny that I thought it would fall and die on the first mile, but it proved me wrong and was quite agile, resilient, walking mountains fast like an ibex, you know, like a mountain goat. It was like amazing how it was walking. So the horse driver was like in the process of establishing his authority with the horse because he was running all over the place, and he was running after this. And we just like we walk up and he's like way down, like in a valley, running after the horse. But anyway, eventually he got a handle of it, and so it was really, really beautiful, beautiful places, panoramic views. We went to the all the way to the elevation of 12,000 feet, which is like we started probably from 7,000, but so it was like really like we could see, look down and see the eagles, you know, floating there, you know. So we looked down on eagles. It was kind of interesting. And the whole time, we only met one tourist, Australian guy. Nobody else was like no tourists in the bar. And usually, um, so we're tracking, and the guides they usually know all the places where we could. There are some small separate houses. Uh, we mostly got like rice. We didn't get much food with us. Figured just go for like 5 days to a week, and they usually find you know places to stay overnight. So here is the one. You see, that's I'm sitting here, and this is the small hut, and in the middle of nowhere. Nobody lives there. It's just for people who pass by to spend the night. It's built usually shepherds. They with a flock. That's how they find a roof. And so we stayed there, and then uh, you know before we stopped, like our you know guard, he said, well, let's get something to eat. We're in a let's get something to eat. We're in the we passed the village, you know. Said give us some money. So we said okay. So we're gonna buy a sheep. The sheep, like four of us, we can't eat the whole sheep. I said okay, then chicken. All right. So we gave him live chicken, and and then he just put the chicken down, and it started to run, and we just like ran after this chicken. And it's like first time I realized that I have to, you know, uh, catch my dinner, because otherwise we would be like we only had rice. So anyway, we cornered the chicken, that went into the hut, and then the guy dived, and found the chicken, killed it. It was still running, hitting the tree after without head. Crazy chicken. So anyway, so we traveled there. We met like some baboons there that travel in big, 50 baboons. They're a little dangerous, but if you got close, they start to make like a lot of noise, and oh my God, you don't want to come closer. But otherwise, they just, go ahead with their business. So, and then we spent there about 5 days and went down, um, uh, and um, and now we got into the area of Gondar. So Gondar, yeah, this is the enclave. Uh, so since 16th century AD, Ethiopian emperors started to spend rainy seasons near Lake Tana, and Gondar was founded in 1635 by Emperor Fasilides. At this time, the central power shifted to the west, to the Gondar, and in the 17th century, that became the seat of the emperor. So it is interesting to remember the legend of Prester John. I hope you heard of this Prester John. It was popular in Europe between 12th and 17th centuries, and it describes a Christian king said to rule over Christian nation lost amidst the Muslims and pagans in the Orient. And at first, Prester John was imagined to live in India, but after the coming of Mongols to the Western world, accounts placed the king in Central Asia. And eventually, Portuguese explorers convinced themselves that they had found him in Ethiopia, because this was really isolated Christian kingdom. So, and that was the time of the Muslim expansion in that area. There are Muslims, Somalia, so Somali Muslim military leader, Imam Ahmad, uh, uh, he started campaign to conquer Christian Ethiopia in 1529, 16th century. So at that time, Christian Queen Yeleni appealed to various European powers, and specifically it appeared to Portugal for assistance. And finally, son of Vasco da Gama, Cristóvão da Gama, led an expeditionary force of 400 musketeers in 1541. I guess very few of you know that son of Vasco da Gama fought in Ethiopia, helping Christian Queen Yeleni. So these 400 musketeers, because it was very advanced weaponry for the time, they managed to facilitate a major victory against the vastly superior force in 1542. So Imam Ahmad realized the importance of contemporary warfare and equipped his army with muskets and artillery. And a year later, he defeated the Ethiopians, and then he captured and executed Cristóvão da Gama. So he was buried in Ethiopia. Ruling emperor at the time, Gelavdevos, with the remaining musketeers from Portugal, defeated finally Muslim forces, and Imam Ahmad was killed by a Portuguese musketeer who swore to avenge the death of Cristóvão. So this is we visited this royal enclosure with Fasilides Castle, it's called, because he founded it various places. Most of the buildings are 17th and 18th century, very distinct Ethiopian imperial architecture. Let me show you different angles here. So that's on there in this thing. This is another part of it. Okay. Very interesting. Anybody wants to ask questions or say anything? I'm actually moving pretty fast, but we're coming to the end soon. Anybody?
Yes, I have a question. The British were there like 10 years, more or less. So did you see any buildings that, I mean, maybe not in these towns, but in the capital, do you see any buildings that obviously were British or no?
No, in Addis Ababa, no, I haven't seen it. Addis Ababa was dominated by the Russian architecture, like a wide streets, like typical socialist realism style, architecture, similar to Moscow. So no, it was, but that's a big like the small towns. They haven't been, no, British didn't leave much, um, uh, and they weren't there long enough anyway. Um, so
But
so this
it seems that historically is that they divide Ethiopia into two countries, like typically British divide and conquer. So Ethiopia lost their coast and they lost their power.
no, actually, they didn't divide it. Even the Italians already divided this. Italians were there with Mussolini, much earlier, and they've been there not only before Mussolini. It was also a very famous Italian colony in 19th century, Abyssinia. Yeah, so Eritrea, yes, been separate for quite a while.
Because it seems so similar to Ethiopia. It seems like it's part of the same,
Eritrea, yeah, but they have a different language. They fought independence war, very long independence war, for like I don't know, 25 years, no, 30 years, 30 years independence war they fought, because so they had some separate identity, developed, and felt it was unjust, the forceful annexation of Eritrea in 1962. That's when it happened, and that was during the Haile Selassie rule. And even though it's changed to the Mengistu took power in '74, they still continued, and they still continued to fight for independence, and eventually, with the help of others who wanted to get rid of Mengistu, they achieved the results. Yeah, that's another one, another structure there. That's a kind of like a church. Yeah, you see the. Okay, this is Cristóvão da Gama, by the way. That's his sculpture. It's not in Ethiopia. It's in Portugal. But this sculpture is a part of the uh, uh, bigger one that depicting his actions in Ethiopia. Okay, so this is like a map of Ethiopia. You see where Eritrea is right here. This is Djibouti. And you see all the cities that we talked about. Addis Ababa, we went here to Waldia, went to Lalibela, hard to get, and then eventually we got to Axum, then we get to Simeon Mountains. This is not exactly in scale. This is a very large park. Then eventually went to Gondar, and from that's where the that enclosure. And later on we went to the Kardar. So this is also another big city on the Lake Tana. This is Lake of Tana, and this is the source of the Blue Nile. So this is the Blue Nile. Okay, it goes into Sudan and Egypt. It connects with the White Nile, but this is the source of most of the water that goes into the Nile River.
Greg, that's where they build this controversial dam right now.
Yeah, they want, yes, exactly. Yeah, but this is the much bigger source of water than the White Nile. So, and that's why, this is, okay. So
yeah, there could be a war between Egypt and Ethiopia.
Yes. The Egyptians are very worried about this.
Because they can control the flow?
Yeah, there's the source. If they build the dam, they will control, most of the water. So now so we got to the Bhardar. So by the way, this lake is about 6,000 feet above the sea level. 6,000 feet. This lake. It's, and it was discovered by a Scottish explorer, James Bruce, in 1770. Okay, this is another picture um, of the Lake Tana. I mean, some of the rivers are feeding it, and some and the new law and the Blue Nile comes out of here. This is the corridor, the city, and this is the um, uh, it says it in Russian.
Vodopad, which
Yeah,
means
but fall, yeah. So this
waterfall.
is the waterfall, and so the reason I wanted to see is that you see there are a lot of islands here, and these islands have churches, very old churches. So uh, so it was actually at some point they believed that in these islands they were hiding the Ark of the Covenant for a while, and then they have monastery. Um, one of them, the most famous one, the 14th century monastery, Debre Mariam, and the 18th century Narga Selassie. Uh, uh, and then there is one Tana Kuros, that's where supposedly were hiding Ark of the Covenant in difficult times before it was moved to Axum later on. Um, so uh, so we visited Debre Mariam, the 14th century one, but we took a boat, local boat with guys, just two of us and a guy, and we went there to some islands. So,
Greg, quick question. How does this lake relate to Lake Victoria, or is this lake what used to be called Lake Victoria?
No. Lake Victoria is in another place. I think it's in Tanzania, or I forgot where it is, but it's another place.
Tanzania.
Yeah, it's actually Lake Victoria is a bigger place. I think it also has waterfall, but I think maybe the flow is not as big. Maybe it's not as highly elevated as Lake Tana, but so it also provides some water for
the Nile.
Well, yeah, for the Nile, but it is the Blue Nile that provides most of the water. I don't know what the ratio is. Maybe 2/3 or something. I don't know.
Oh, that's interesting because, that's good to know. I was always under the dumb impression that Lake Victoria was the primary source for the Nile.
Yeah, it was a long time assertion that was it, but eventually, after the Lake Tana was discovered in the 18th century, and there were more expeditions there, contemporary consensus is that the Blue Nile is the major.
That's good to know. Because, there was a famous book by some British explorer, when he, quote, discovered Lake Victoria as the ultimate source of the Nile. And so that's just kind of gotten, I guess, embedded in the popular mythology.
Yeah, because Lake Victoria was founded much earlier than Lake Tana. Lake Victoria was found, I think, in the 17th century. And it was like well known. This was unknown. It is way up on a much higher elevation, 6,000 feet, and it was the only found in. And because they thought that they found source of Nile, they didn't realize it, but they were still researching. So the famous, by the way, this is the waterfall on the Blue Nile. By the way, the one that you saw on the map, and this is the James Bruce. The Scottish explorer who found it. This is good. So, okay, so what? I have we're coming to that. I have a few more stories, but as far as the as far as the whole thing, the historical and all the data I wanted to relate to you, I think I'm done. I'm going to stop here. It's almost 2 o'clock. And I want to see if you have any questions, anyone wants to add anything, any discussion.
Greg, I have a question. Zach.
Yeah.
What is the region of Beit Israel in Ethiopia? Or can you talk to that? Is it really Sheba's son, descendants, or was there any DNA down in that regard? Just interesting.
Well, I think you mean historically how the Jewish religion got in there? Is that what you're asking?
Either Jewish religion or that was now you can think of it. I mean, obviously, the United States would think of Jews as a religion, but in Russia, we thought of us as ethnically. What would you think about that?
Yeah. The thing is that when they ran DNA tests on Galatians, right? That the Galatians were brought to Israel because there was there were basically just a few thousand of them left because the policy was hugely anti-Semitic at the time, and they ran the DNA test. They actually turned out that there's almost no Jewish blood in them.
Greg, it's generally thought that the Semitic-speaking peoples came from what is now Yemen, and it may have been not so much a big migration, but it may have been the foundation of merchant colonies. Mm-hmm. And it's assumed there were Jews in southern Arabia. There was even a Jewish king of the Hadramaut at one point. So it's assumed that the Jews may have come in with as merchants in that general movement, which eventually led to the Christianization of Ethiopia. But it does have a strange Judaistic influence. And nobody is quite sure whether it was just native. I mean, they had a dynasty they called the Solomonic because they claimed descent from.
Yeah, and the Menelik the First. Menelik the First is considered to be first emperor. I mean, he's not exactly a historical figure, more kind of a legendary, and he was supposedly son of Solomon. But historically, like what John said, that's hard to discern. And but they were Jewish tradition, religion prior to Christianization in the 4th century, as I described. Saint Clemente converted them, and there was some maybe local pre-Abrahamic religions existed there. But the organized one was.
Also, a question on Ark of Covenant that presumably was brought in.
Yeah, somebody. I think somebody needs to mute themselves. Okay, good. Yeah, go ahead. Zach?
Question on the Ark of Covenant, that they have that church where they're not allowed to see it, and I think there's one.
Yes.
There's one. You would think a cleric or you think a minister that is not allowed to leave the church.
There is one family, and it's a hereditary. They are the guardians, and so let me find that church. They're the guardians. Yeah, that's the church. That's the one. And they have a chamber, and nobody else can see. Only one person alive can see the Ark of the Covenant. He's the guardian. That's his main. He lives there. He's there all the time. And anybody who would try to see that person probably has to be killed.
One more question. As we know, up until the Mussolini annexing Ethiopia, there was Ethiopia particularly was the only lost outpost in Africa that was independent all this long.
I think your contact is makes a lot of noise when you talk. I don't know why.
Yeah, because you're somewhere, Zach, right? You're.
Yeah. By the way, Greg, Haile Selassie's great-grandson, the great-grandson who is in line for the the throne, so to speak, lives here in the Washington area.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Well, you know that there is the whole religion organized in Jamaica, Rastaman, based on Haile Selassie is the prophet in the image of Jesus Christ, and his dynasty name is Rastafarian, and that's why they Rastaman, Rastafarian. You
Interesting.
know, it really came out from Haile Selassie because they consider him a saint. They consider him a prophet.
Yeah.
New religion.
Yeah, his grandson, I met him once at a, literally just introduced at a event, actually at the Swedish embassy. But he's he looks like Haile Selassie, a young Haile Selassie. He's in his mid-30s now, I would say. And he's a businessman, I think. Sort of a businessman, philanthropist, sort of guy. He's not he doesn't come across as a Rastafarian, but maybe he is a Rastafarian, just a businessman Rastafarian.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess, yeah, this is the end of my presentation. And, any comments, any questions? Just want to open it for the general discussion. If there are
Greg,
any.
thanks, very interesting.
Yeah, I hope.
I was doing some reading, and it's very controversial. The place, if there is one, of the Ark of the Covenant.
Well,
there
of
are
course.
many stories.
Yes, definitely. I mean, there is a great book that I recommended. Is the Sign and the Seal, by Graham Hancock. Very interesting, and there are a lot of things. But I mean, obviously, I think I have indicated which part of it legendary and which part is historical. San Fermenti is a historical figure, and clearly Menelik is not. But there aren't too much. But definitely Lalibela, most likely considered historical because he is because he met with Anastasius or Athanasius, which is historical figure, patriarch, and he's been uh, uh, given the bishop position, and he's the one who converts. Uh, I mean, the thing is that from what I was telling, I mean, it's a fascinating country that very few people know about. Um, there are a lot of interesting things. Again, I covered mostly besides of some things that I've observed myself. The three major periods in the history: the Axumite kingdom from 80 BC to 825 AD, 12th century shift of power into the Lalibela, into that region, and then 16th, 17th century shift to the Gondar with the help of Portuguese. By the way, the remnants of Portuguese musketeers settled on the shores of Lake Tana, and probably their descendants still live there. I mean, mixed with the local population, obviously, but it's the story of.
So, Greg, I have a couple of questions. I found more quiet area. I apologize. So, question one I have is, how far did the Axum at the time had stretched? I heard that they actually went as far as the Arabic Peninsula and had conquests as far as that is concerned. The second question,
yeah.
The second question. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, the Axum Empire is like, as I showed on one of the maps, it actually included a big portion of southern Arabian Peninsula with Yemen. It's included, it was part of it, and that's probably how that they were probably related, similar languages. I mean, The languages originated from there, so yeah, they had a lot of connections.
So they had the control of the entrance to the Red Sea.
Yeah.
So it was a great place to.
Yeah.
And a second question I have, obviously, via Mussolini annexing Ethiopia or invading Ethiopia, what have you. Prior to that, Ethiopia was considered to be one of the last outposts, and Axum Kingdom was last outpost of independence, and therefore, you mentioned the name of the king. I forgot that it was used during the Great Game. Apparently, Russia was involved with the Orthodoxy and did support Ethiopian independence when Italians had its, basically wanted to take over, and England was involved in. I think Queen of England got involved in what was it called? The brokering the deal where Axum was remained independent and Italians weren't able to invade. Did Russia have a lot to do with, because of Orthodoxy, prior to even World War I, protecting Ethiopia, helping them out, or it was more like or something is unknown in that regard?
Well, I'm not sure, but certainly Russia got involved into and helped Mengistu to come to power, and so they in this power struggle and expansion of the communist regime, they succeeded there.
In the 70s, I think they were called.
In 74, he came to power to 74, Mengistu, and he ruled until 1991. So consider it 17 years. 17 years.
I just know there was a great game was going on where Italy, up until Mussolini, wanted to get in, but Liberia and Ethiopia were the only two countries that were independent and were not colonized up until that point.
Ralph,
so
we wanted to ask him.
Yeah, just a comment and question on Punt. Part of Somalia is now known as Puntland. And I think, I guess maybe this was a name they resurrected when Somalia broke up in 1991. And does anybody know, did they just sort of pick up the name Punt from, a couple of thousand years ago? Or is there any continuity? Does anybody know why they want to go back to Punt, to take the name of Punt for that Horn of Africa as part of Somalia?
I guess it's ancient name that Egyptians called them for, and I mean obviously Ethiopia, Axum, whatever. Somalia probably was part of it. It was just maybe one region. I don't know honestly.
I mean, I did a presentation on Nubia before, and in the Bible they refer to the King Taharka who fought against the Syrians as a pious Ethiopian pharaoh. They were Nubian pharaohs, but or the pharaohs that were Nubian descent, but they were referred to a pious Ethiopian pharaoh. So I don't know if obviously the land of Yam was actually referred both to Nubia and Ethiopia. So that could be where it came from. And also, was there any artifacts like maybe a sphinx from the land of Punt that just like the pyramids in Nubia we had, was there any artifacts from the land of Punt at all?
You're breaking up. You're breaking up.
No, so was there any artifact like the way we have pyramids in Nubia from the middle to new kingdom of pharaohs? I know there was a sphinx that in Eritrea that they found recently that was from that area that particularly has African features. But I'm not sure if there is any kind of burial like to have Nubia, the burial for the kings, the what they call the Clear Mountain type of thing, Jerbel. I don't know if they have something like that in Ethiopia. Any kind of king's burials or any kind of pyramids or any kind of sphinxes that would refer to that land, or was there any kingdom in particular?
Yeah, I don't know, but certainly the famous barrel on the temple of Hatshepsut in Thebes what you know, that's the that's the major source about the land of Pont, and that's where the name is known for. That's 1500. But there is even mention earlier. So that's no, it's a very very interesting. The people are very nice, always like smiling. They live hard life. Sometimes we're like on the bus, and there is guy stopping the bus, and he's carrying two live chickens by their legs. So we walk into the bus, and he's paying with one chicken to the bus driver for the ride. I couldn't believe it. And the way he just took it, threw it somewhere there.
Greg,
And then, yeah.
have you seen any Armenian diaspora there? I had at my work in Ohio, I had a colleague who came from Ethiopia. He was fluent in English and so on, but his father, his family came at some time, I don't know, at some point of time from Armenia. And from what I understood, there should be a significant Armenian diaspora, maybe just in Addis Ababa, maybe another part of Ethiopia, I don't know. You haven't seen any?
No, I'm unaware of it, and I didn't spend that much time in Addis Ababa. I was more interested in historical stuff, and there is not much in Addis Ababa. I went to museum there, but not like, maybe I've been like one day in the beginning and maybe like 2-3 days after, but no.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Anybody?
This isn't about today's presentation, but last week with Nubia, I was speaking to my son about the presentation, and he told me he had been in Egypt, I'm going to say more than 25 years ago, and he went on a felucca, and the guys who ran the place where you could rent or have somebody sail the felucca, they refer to themselves as Nubians living in Egypt.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I don't know. I also traveled in Egypt, and also like on Felucca, went on the river on the Nile. Was about the same time, also before my Ethiopian trip. Yeah. I don't know. Not much connection in Egypt nowadays to Ethiopia, but except that conflict brewing, about the water supply. So yeah.
Thank you, Greg. It was really interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, Greg, one more thing. The biggest port right now where they get, I'm talking about water supply, is in Eritrea. How do they deal with that with Ethiopia? Because they don't have the, I guess, Red Sea outpost, right? Eritrea is the one that has the outpost.
At the time I was there was a war because they raised taxes, but they have an agreement. And the Eritreans know that Ethiopia, they could strangle Ethiopia economically, and Ethiopia will respond military for no question about it. It's a matter of survival. So they have they would never do this, Eritreans. Why would they do this? It's a death warrant. The Ethiopian will annex them if they're going to do it, create a lot of problems. So they're flexible. They resolve this diplomatically. They have conflicts from time to time. At the time I was there, it was a major conflict. They bombed the hell out of it. So far, right now, they just have trade agreements. That's it. Ethiopian population is almost like 109,000 or million people. 109. Can you imagine? Ethiopian population. It's a huge country and a big territory and big population. Eritrea is like 1/10 of it. So it's like there's no chance. You see, they tried a few times, and then it ended very badly for them. So I don't think they would go for it. Maybe a bit here, a bit there. Okay.
Thank you, Greg. Yeah, amazing presentation. Really appreciate it. And guys, do we have another one tomorrow? Stateless ethnicities, the Richard presenting. So we'll hopefully see you tomorrow. Now, see you next week. We have a couple of good presentations, and Lisa is going to do Marno letters. And please look at the schedule and other things that we have. And Greg is going to have another one on Febo from Plutarch. That's going to be like at the end of the, May.
By Plato, yeah.
Plato, sorry,
by Plato.
Plato. By Plato, yeah, sorry.
Thank
And
you. That was great.
Okay, I
Very,
hope
very interesting.
I hope it was interesting. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yes.
It's and don't feel it was a valuable time for you. I hope. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. All right.
Thanks a lot, Greg. Very good.
Sure. Okay. Take care. Bye. I'm gonna end the meeting. All the best to everyone.